Director Capello?
Here.
Director Urosic?
Here.
Director McLaren? Here. Phyllis Shannon? Here. Kate White?
Here.
And Craig Parton?
Here.
We also have Matt Knudsen and Pete Thompson.
Okay, I'll be back in a little bit. I have to go get my kids. Okay. See you then. Be back in a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Number 3 is adoption of the agenda. At the discretion of the board, all items appearing on this agenda, whether or not expressly listed for action, may be deliberated and may be subject to action by the board. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Adam. I move that we approve the agenda.
Derek, I'll second.
All right. We have the first and a second. Roll call vote, please. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. That motion passes. We'll go on to number 4. Public comments for non-agenda items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding Watermaster business that is not on the agenda without acting or entering a dialogue with the public. Board members may ask clarifying questions about topics posed by the public. Your matter may be referred to the administrator and or advisory committee. Do I have any public comments?
Patty, this is Kyle. Could I talk?
Sure. Go right ahead, Galen.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we do.
I just wanted to talk about something I talked about at the last meeting, and it was about the Willis class when they want to drill a new well. Many times the applicant is asking for and getting 6, 7, 8 times more water than what the small pumpers received in the judgment, which was 1.2 acre feet, but not to exceed 3 acre feet. Just last month, the Watermaster Board approved a Willis class member for 7.6 acre feet with RWAs, and the applicant requested the water for a single-family residence, landscaping, 15 to 20 fruit trees, and 120 shade trees. Another applicant was approved for 8.5 acre feet and a single-family home with 430 fruit trees. Many of us on the advisory board have voiced our opposition to these requests, but we don't feel like they've been considered. John Ukastat told me one time that his home and his landscaping, and he had lots of trees on his property, and he had many horses, and he had no trouble staying under 3 acre feet. Adam brought up at the last meeting, I think, he brought up the idea that these approvals could produce a secondary market of selling water, and that's happening. People with these domestic wells are filling totes and water trucks, and they take the water to illegal cannabis growers who have no production right. I was told last month at the Watermaster meeting that we had lots of water banks, but of course that water can leave the valley. AVEC water that's imported and banked can be exported out of the valley, and I believe that's the same with other banks. They get their water from out of the valley. I would suggest as applicants come forward from the Willis class that they be given 1.2 acre feet of water and up to, but not to exceed 3 acre feet, predicated on the availability of water, with RWAs, of course, being required. People wanting more water should intervene, purchase at least 1 acre foot of production water. Then they can purchase carryover water, lease, or purchase another party's production right. Many of us believe this to be a fair solution, many of us on the advisory board, and other people too, that this is a fair solution for the Willis class water needs. The 5-member Watermaster Board are the only ones in the valley that have the power to protect our basin. And many on the advisory board believe this deserves some consideration. And also, this would solve the problem with 14M. I think it's a better solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Okay. Hearing no more public comment, I will move to special presentations, which we have none at this time. The consent agenda is the payment of bills through April 23, 2021. B is Treasurer's Report for the month ending March 31st, 2021. Accounts Receivable Aging Summary as of March 31st, 2021. And minutes of the March 24th, 2021 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to pass the consent agenda?
This is Derek. I'll make that motion.
Seconded by Adam.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Is there any public comment? Roll call vote, please. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic? Director Urosic?
Sorry, Daryl, I'm mute. Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. That motion passes. We will move on to number 7, which is the Advisory Committee report. Advisory Committee Chair Chasen. James, are you on the line?
Hi, this
We
is
can
Dave.
hear you.
Hear you. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
We can barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, the advisory committee met last Wednesday to discuss the action items on the agenda, and all the items on the agenda were approved. If there's any questions regarding the report, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank
Now
you.
we'll go to number 8, which is our action item. We have a public hearing to consider proposed revisions to section 13 FI and adopting section 14.n of the AVWatermster's rules and regulations. Right now, I'm opening the public hearing. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move that we open the public hearing.
Do I have a second? Okay, with a motion and a second, I'm now opening the public hearing. Who was the second on that?
This is Derek. I'll second it. I'm not sure if anybody's...
I'm sorry, I thought I heard it. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. So the public hearing is now open. Is there any public wishing to speak?
I think let's give you let's get a report from General Counsel first.
Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
all right. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to, even though it's open, then I guess we're going to do the General Counsel, a few comments, and then let everyone, if they have to weigh in.
Thank you. A couple of comments about the proposed amendments to the rules and regulations. Let me take the first one that I think is non-controversial. At least we haven't heard any objections to it at the advisory committee level or in the last month since the language was posted. and that's dealing with revisions to Section 13F to the rules and regulations. We provided a memo last month that is in your packet now at page 29 and 30 and 31 that describes the modest amendment to the rules and regulations, adding one sentence. Let me back up. The genesis of this modification was the board's concern about people being involved in transfers of water rights that they have control over only by contract and not by ownership. We had some situations where parties transferred certain production rights that were owned by other entities, and it involved a lot of Watermaster staff time and counsel time to confirm what the nature was of the right being asserted by the transferor. You'll recall we had a number of discussions about this. And last month we provided a memo to the board and then posted the revised language, which actually only adds one sentence. And that one sentence is underlined and in bold on page 47 of your board packet. And that one sentence says, a party may not transfer water rights not owned by that party pursuant to the terms of the judgment, regardless of whether the party may be entitled to use such water rights pursuant to a lease agreement or other private contract. So this resolution adopts the addition of that one sentence on the issue of transfer relationships going forward. So that's 13FII, and I think it'd probably be best in order-wise to stop and see if there's any comments or questions about that, and then move to adopt the resolution on page 47 relating to that additional language with respect to transfers. And then after that's addressed, I'll make a few comments about the proposed amendment to 14N concerning new production, which may be a little more controversial. So any questions or comments about revision of 13FI to add that one sentence? So you, Chair,
Craig, just for clarifications, I mean, I want to make sure if I look at our agenda on public hearing, you know, are you recommending, I mean, the public hearing normally goes to your comments, goes to, you know, public comments, and we close it, then go to the resolutions? Are we amending the agenda off of that?
no, we can do it that way. I just thought we'd cover first 13FI and the resolution on that. We obviously want to get public comment too, so I don't want to amend any procedural structure that we have. I just wanted to take the transfer language first and get any public comment on that or board comment, and then I'll move to section 14N.
Okay. This is Adam. I have a quick comment. I like the change. I think it's good. It will save time, stop time. However, would this by itself prevent someone from submitting an application to lease or transfer water? And we still have, or the staff still have to go through the process to tell that individual, no, you cannot do that, and the rules and regulations preclude you from doing that? Or how is it going to be communicated to a prospective lessor?
Yes, the way that is designed here is to also amend the transfer request form. That's on page 48 of the resolution.
Got it.
So they have to recognize that and proceed under penalty of perjury that they are the owner of the water right.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So, Madam Chair, I'd suggest that there's not further board comment, that we solicit any comments from the public.
Okay, and are we also doing advisory committee comment? Okay.
There were none from the report of the advisory committee.
Okay, then I will ask for any public comments on this 13FI, section 13FI, and adopting section 14N. Okay, and we are only taking comments right now for the 13FI, because I think he's going to go over the next section.
Yes. If no public comments about 13FI, we'll turn to 14N, which relates to new production applications and limitations on the exercise of new production application rights. There is a memorandum on that subject in your board packet at page 31, which provides the background for what the concern of the board was, the board requested that we develop some rules and regulations and new production applications that would implement limitations on new production. The genesis of this was the concern that new production applications were susceptible to being gamed, and people would simply submit a number grossly or in any amount, begin to exceed the number, and the sole remedy of the Watermaster was to impose replacement water assessment. So we proposed some language last month that has been in the board packet now this entire time and posted for public comment. We did not receive comment directly from the advisory committee, but there are some concerns, I understand, that landowners or others may have with respect to the language. So with respect to that, the resolution dealing with the revision of 14N is on page 43 to 45 of your packet, and is subject now to questions, comments, and public comment on the revision of 14N.
Okay, do we have any comment, question?
This is Adam. What comments did the public have, Craig?
Well, beginning last month, Director Ariki, the advisory committee provided some questions and recommendations in their report. It's in the board packet for last month, March 24th board meeting at page 22.
Mm-hmm.
And they suggested that the language should be more discretionary with respect to certain actions. And in fact, we revised the language slightly to recognize, to give discretion in certain circumstances to the Watermaster in implementing these new limitations on new production. They had a request about that an applicant for new production should be required to purchase 5 years of replacement water upon approval of the application before starting production. We did not incorporate that recommendation into our comments. That's certainly something the board can send us back to the drawing board if it wishes to do that. And then they requested or recommended report the meter reads on a quarterly or semi-annual schedule to monitor the actual production, and extend the repurchase of replacement water before the, as they call it, the deposit falls below 20%. Some financial incentives for people to abide by the new production application amount. But Mr. Kyle provided some further comments just now that we may want to, the board might want to direct further consideration of.
Okay. Now this applies to both the small pumper class and the non-pumper class.
Yes. It applies to all applications for new production.
Okay. Is it consistent with the judgment? I seem to recall that, yes, small pumpers can pump up to 3 acre-feet free of charge, but they also can pump up to 25 acre-feet if they pay replacement charges.
Yes, this is, we believe the proposed Rule 14N is consistent with the judgment and the existing rules and regulations. I cannot say that I have looked at Mr. Kyle's comments as to whether those are consistent with the judgment and the rules and regulations. I think there may be some difficulties with imposing a limit of 1.2 acre feet for domestic use and 1 acre foot for agricultural use with respect to new production applications. So if you were to direct us to look at Mr. Kyle's comments, I'd ask for a delay of a month in implementing Section 14 so that we can see whether it's consistent indeed with the rules and regulations.
This is Director Chisholm. I would, in thinking about what Kyle had mentioned with regards to the use of the new production right, especially the use off-site for the secondary market. I think that one provision that we might be able to add to section would be to make a provision that the water that is utilized in new production is used on the property by the applications exported to another location, sold, end up with a a line of water truck out there part of the so, and then you can. It's just one thought about making sure that the production that is the new production that's being approved and has gone through discussion is actually only where
We can do that. Happy to do whatever the board requests in terms of 14N. It may be best to defer decision on 14N pending looking at the issues raised by Mr. Kyle and Director Chisholm's comment about it being used on the land now, instead of trying to amend the resolution on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Craig, this is Adam. Did you talk to the committee of attorneys that at one point they were helping us with rules and regulations just to get their input on this?
Outside of providing it to everybody in memo form back in March, Director Ariki, I haven't had direct conversations with the attorneys group on it. I expected it to follow through the advisory committee process to get any feedback, and the advisory committee had no direct comments on or opposition to adopting the resolution relating to Section 14.
Craig, this is Derek. Just a question, and I guess to pose it differently to address, the concerns of, water theft, water exploitation, secondary market, and staying within the judgment. And maybe it's leading, as you've mentioned, postponing this is, what I want to be cautious of is making sure that we are, whatever rules and regs are within the judgment.
Right.
What I want to make sure is that we're not trying to impose enforcement and, in a manner that it becomes harmful to people doing good, right? The ones that aren't, selling it and aren't doing wrong. But, we need to come up, as we talked about in the board meeting, and I brought it up again, is a mechanism to enforce above and beyond, impeding all those that are doing the right thing and are willing to pay replacement water and are not exporting and doing all those. And I want to caution us all that, we don't start, going outside the bounds of the judgment to impact those that are doing well for those who are doing wrong. And so, if the board does decide today to push this off, that, my points to counsel and to the staff is to think in that manner.
Right on comments. I couldn't agree more. That would be the primary focus, would be to see the consistency with the judgment and see if any amendments, as directed by the board. We've had Director Chisholm's comments and landowner Kyle's comments, but we would want direction from the board to take this back, assimilate the comments, see if they're consistent with the judgment, and present a revised Section 14 rule for the board's consideration at the May meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm all for that, because I agree with Derek and Duane's comments. Conceptually, I'm in agreement with the proposed revision to the rules and regulations. We just want to make sure that we're within the judgment and not deviating from that. So I would be for that, to postpone it for a month and revisit what Mr. Kyle's proposed or stated, and Director Chisholm also stated, and then take that into consideration with the proposed language and ensure consistency with the judgment.
Okay, I also had a public comment come in through the chat from Jeffrey, a.k.a. Moldy, and he had a question regarding public comment on non-agenda items. What are you doing about all the water theft going on in the Antelope Valley, and more specifically within the southeast Antelope Valley, because there is a heck of a lot of it going on?
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair, if I may say something about that real quick. The board formed an ad hoc committee. It consisted of myself and Director Perez, together with Mr. Kyle as a member of the landowner public. We met. We decided to set a broader meeting for tomorrow. I believe it's at 3:30. That involves all the stakeholders to discuss this very issue and to coordinate effort among the various stakeholders. Matt may be able to shed some light on that if you want to, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That's correct. There is a follow-up ad hoc meeting, and we've extended that invite out to other entities in the valley that may be useful and helpful in providing recommended solutions. That meeting is tomorrow at.
Okay. So, what is the consensus of the directors?
I would move that we continue this public hearing until our next meeting.
Dwayne, we can't hear you. I didn't hear anything that Dwayne said.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Better.
These words, I'm swallowing the microphone. So, anyway, what I recommend is that we make a motion, or I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until the next meeting, at which should provide sufficient time for the agency attorney to review all comments that have been made today and propose any revisions that you may think are appropriate for consideration by the board. Continue the public hearing.
Okay.
May 26th.
May 26th.
And this is only for section 14 in, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
14 and on.
Yes.
Okay, so do I have a second?
This is Adam. I second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Before we do the vote, can I comment, please? I'd just be curious if there was any other public comments in regards to 14, and I just want to make sure. I know we had that one. I know the board jumped into this pretty, based upon that. I just wanted to make sure before we go that there is, please.
Sure. Is there any other public comment on 14N?
This is Kyle. Mr. Parton, I think you misunderstood me. I said that I would like to see 1.2 acre feet for the Willis class, capped at 3 acre feet, and then they could intervene and purchase 1 acre foot. After they purchase the acre foot, they can get as much water as they want that's on the open market.
I'd appreciate that comment, Mr. Kyle. I'm happy to look at that and see if it's consistent with the judgment. And maybe we can go offline after this meeting's over and clarify exactly what your suggestion is.
I do have a question for Galen. Galen, just to clarify, you're referring to when you say go on the open market to purchase water. That's groundwater that's available or transferable, but you're not discussing the replacement water that would be different type of water, right?
Yes, it would be on Exhibit 4 once you intervene and purchase an acre foot. I know the RWAs are a good deal. They're not exactly perfectly science. You may take water out on the east side and it's put in on the west side. But I believe if we cap these at 3 acre feet, that's the way to go. It makes it simple, very simple, and people have the ability to intervene, and they can purchase water cheaper than what the RWAs are. The RWAs are $4.98 an acre foot. Water can be purchased on the open market somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, $3.40, somewhere in there, $3.80. They can save money. So we're doing a disservice, I think, to people, and AVEC is selling water for a huge price, and they can make a better deal somewhere else.
But I guess my point, Galen, would be is by your proposal, and maybe you and Craig can discuss it more, you're limiting the ability for them to purchase replacement water. Is that what you're recommending, and only being able to have to intervene and buy groundwater?
I was having trouble getting unmuted there. No, I believe in the RWAs. I mean, it's what we have to do, and it's with the judgment. I'm just saying that we've been giving large amounts of water to people, and I don't think we need to do that. I don't think it's the right course. I think it's unwise. And I think 3 acre feet, like I told about Mr. Yucasat, he stayed well under 3 acre feet, and he had lots of trees, lots of horses, yards, a home. 3 acre feet is almost 1 million gallons. So it is a lot of water.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Did we have any other questions, or are we good with our roll call vote now? I just wanted to clarify that the meeting that we're having, the ad hoc committee, that will be tomorrow at 3:30, it is open to the public, and we will have the meeting information on the website after the meeting. Thank you. Okay, for anybody that wants to join. Okay, so roll call vote. Any just for the motion table? Yes. Okay. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ricci?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. So with that, we open the public hearing until our next meeting.
So we haven't voted on the other item, though.
13F Right.
How did
Correct.
we do that? It was part of the public hearing.
No.
So that's action item 8B that's coming up. So we just closed the public hearing, or extended the public hearing. Now we should move on to 8B, which is section 14N resolution, but that's being extended, so we can move on to item 8C.
Okay, so now we're going to item 8C, which is the AVWatermster Rules and Regulations, revisions to section 13FI to the AVWatermster Rules and Regulations. So right now we have consideration and possible action on Resolution R2113, approving revisions to Section 13FI of the AVWatermster's Rules and Regulations. I know we've already discussed it. Do I have a motion on that?
I have a clarification, for the attorney, that the public hearing is still open. Is it okay for the board to consider
Well, that's why I was thinking it would be better to have the open session on 13FI and then close it and vote on it. But the public hearing is continuing only as to 14N. That's clear in the record. We've had public comment. We've had board discussion of 13FII. And I think it's appropriate now to consider whether we can adopt that resolution.
So do I have a motion?
I'll do the motion if you remind me of the resolution number.
Yes, resolution number R21-13.
Okay. I move that we approve resolution R21-13. This is Adam.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a first and a second. And is there any other public comment before we go to a roll call vote? Okay, Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ricci?
Yes.
Director Patello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
Director McLaren? Yes. Okay. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to D, which is well application, small pumper qualifying documentation, and replacement well application. A is consideration and possible action on resolution number R2114, approving small pumper qualifying and replacement well application. We will go to the first one, which is Roosevelt Community Church small pumper qualifying.
All right, so in your packet is our standard resolution beginning on page 51, and attached to that resolution are the 3 applications being considered today. 2 of them are small pumper qualifying applications, and one of them being a replacement well. Angel has a brief presentation that she's going to go through and explain each one of these. I would like to point out on item C, which is the Coachella Green LLC replacement well application. This one came to admin staff as an emergency. Their well went down and they needed to get a new well constructed ASAP for their operation. So, as you know, admin staff reviews and approves or recommends approval of all replacement wells. And so we went ahead, went through our standard process of collecting the fee, the application, making sure the replacement well met all the criteria that admin staff utilized to analyze the application. We went ahead and gave approval to the applicant to get started on their well permit with the county. I did reach out to board members to give them a heads up that this is what we were doing. So the board is, staff is recommending that the board officially approve this application today. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that item. But I'll turn it over to Angel and she'll go through each one of these.
Okay, good morning. We have 2 small pumper qualifying applications on this month's agenda. The first one starts on page 54 of your agenda packet. The applicant is Roosevelt Community Church. This well used for domestic use in the Central Antelope sub-area, provides water to a house on the property, and provides water to a church located on the neighboring parcel. This well was drilled in 1976, and the documentation provided shows that the well pumped less than 25 acre-feet of water per year from 1946 to 2015. Church small pumper qualifying documentation. Does anybody have any questions on this application?
So this is just for a replacement well, right?
This is actually just a small pumper qualifying.
So is the church on the list already or no?
The well is, they're not on the list. They're qualifying as a small pumper. The well itself is qualifying as a small pumper. The well provides water to the house as well as the church on the neighboring parcel. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on. The second small pumper qualifying application starts on page 66 of your agenda packet. The applicant is Zalin Lotji. As of 2020, this well has been used to water fruit trees in the herb garden. This well was constructed in 2008, and the documentation provided shows that the well pumped less than 25 acre-feet of water per year from 1946 to 2015. The Watermaster staff does recommend approval of the Lot C small pumper qualifying documentation. Does anybody have any questions on this application? Okay, and as Matt said, our replacement well application on this month's agenda is for Coachella Green LLC. The application starts on page 85 of your agenda packet. Coachella Green LLC is a known small pumper by succession, and this property is located in the Central Antelope sub-area. The applicant states that they will pump on an average of 2.5 acre-feet of water per year from the replacement well. Their existing well stopped working in late March, and because this well is necessary to operate the warehouse cooling system, the applicant did express the urgency to replace the well to avoid losing the currently stored produce and avoid halting future production. admin staff did approve this application and provided a copy of the approved application to the applicant to start the drilling process.
And so I think it's being handled appropriately to vet it in public now and get any comments from the public about the appropriateness of this application being granted. I think his outreach was appropriate.
All right. And he consulted you before he outreached to each board member?
Did he consult me?
This is Matt. No, I did not consult with legal counsel. And just to clarify, when I contacted each board member, I did not share with the other board member. So, in my opinion, it's entirely within the Brown Act.
Well, I'm not an expert in it. I just wanted to go on the record to spend a few minutes talking about him. Okay. If Craig is comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it.
Let's put it this way. I think in a one-off situation, in the emergency situation that's been described, it was appropriate conduct. But it should be very rare that is the process that we've...
All right. Thank you. So for any future incidents similar to this, do you suggest anything, Craig? Other than
that there be legal counsel be involved in the decision to determine if there's any Brown Act issues.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the Coachella Green LLC replacement well application?
Okay, great. So, do I have a motion for consideration and possible action on the resolution R2114, approving the small buffer qualifying and replacement well application?
This is Derek. I'll make that motion to approve resolution R2114.
This is George. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any public comments on this? Any public comment? Okay, roll call vote, please. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ricci?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. Great. We will go on to E, well applications, new production applications, and new point of extraction application. A is consideration and possible action on resolution number R2115, approving new production and new point of extraction application. We'll have someone.
This is going to be Todd Brownwater giving the presentation.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Kate White from Todd Groundwater. How's my volume? Is it okay?
It's good today.
Good. There's one new point of extraction application on the agenda today, and that starts on page 95 of the packet. And Copa de Oro is retroactively requesting a new point of extraction for a well drilled in late 2018 on a property associated with a production right, and that's in the West Antelope sub-area. And the well currently supplies up to 10 acre-feet per year of water for a solar facility operation and maintenance. It replaces 2 agricultural wells on the property that have been properly destroyed. And Copa de Oro is an Exhibit 4 party, and it sold 315 acre-feet of a 325 acre-feet production right to WDS California 2, and that occurred in 2020. And Copa de Oro has an agreement with Willow Springs Solar to use Copa's remaining 10 acre-feet per year production rights for operational purposes at a solar facility on the property. Now, the property has been acquired by H.A. Willow Springs, LLC, which leases the property to Willow Springs, but Copa still owns the 10 acre-feet of production rights. So there's no material injury associated with this new point of extraction, given that current production, which is up to 10 acre-feet per year, is much less than past production, which was around 325 acre-feet per year. And we recommend approval of this new point of extraction based on the condition that the applicant completes meter documentation approval for this well and complies with all Watermaster meter installation, testing, and reporting requirements. Copa de Oro is to provide the Watermaster with proof of a properly installed Watermaster-approved meter within 90 days. Are there any questions on this application?
Yes. Shouldn't we also ask for the drill log for the well and the permit from the county health?
Yeah, I think we have that in the application package.
Okay. What about the 2 wells that were destroyed?
We could ask for proof of that.
Yes, I would ask that you add that condition, because again, to remind everybody, our job not only to protect the groundwater basin from subsidence, but also to protect the water quality from deteriorating.
Okay, thanks, Em, for that. And so that's for well applications. That's all we have. And so the resolution for approval is R-21-15, and that starts on page 91 of the packet.
Okay. Do I have a motion for possible action on resolution R-21-15, approving the new production and new point of extraction?
Yeah, I move that we approve resolution R-21-15, subject to the submittal of proof of destruction of the 2 existing wells.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please. Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yeah.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
Director McLaren? Yes, and that motion passes. Now we will go on to F, transfer application. Consideration and possible action on resolution number R-21-16, approving transfer of stored and floated water, permanent production right, and carryover water. We will be doing the report.
Yes, this report will be by Todd Brownwater as well.
This is Kate White again, and there are 4 transfers for consideration of approval today, and they're listed on page 134 of the packet. The first request starts on page 136, and Jean Nebaker would like to transfer 1,775 acre-feet of permanent production rights to WDS California 2. This transfer is related to the sale of Mr. Nebaker's land and that is associated with the production right. And Mr. Nebaker's property is in the northwestern portion of the Central Antelope Valley subarea. And he has a total of production rights of 1,775, which is the total amount being transferred. At the end of 2020, he had 570.3 acre-feet of carryover water that he will not be transferring to WDS CA2, but will be keeping it for the time being. Recognizing that this transfer is related to a property sale and that the production rights will remain with the land, Todd Groundwater finds the potential for material injury as defined in the judgment to be negligible, and we recommend approval of this transfer. Are there any questions?
Just out of curiosity, WGS, did they buy the land?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding. They bought the land and the production land.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the second transfer, and that starts on page 158 of the packet. Craig and Marta Van Dam would like to transfer 125 acre-feet of permanent production rights to Calandry Farms. And Calandry Farms would like to buy the water as an investment to be sold at a later date. And because of this, the extraction locations are not known at this time, so no material injury analysis can be conducted. Todd Groundwater recommends approval of this transfer on the condition that a new point of extraction application or a transfer application is submitted in the future before the water is produced, and that the future water use is shown to not cause any material injury. Are there any questions on
how would that be insured? The mechanics of it.
Well, besides the parties agreeing to this, I think that if the water is ever used, because in our water accounting we know where it starts, where it originated, and what conditions are on it, that we, I guess it would be after the fact, but we'd say if they started saying they were using it, we could say you can't do that without doing the transfer.
I'm still not clear on how would that happen. This, so Calandry Farms has water rights, right?
Correct.
And this is just going to be added to that water rights. They have pumping water. This 150 acre feet or so that is being transferred on permanent basis. It's not like it has a marks in it. We know what the acre foot. You know what I mean? I just don't know what that means even, and if it's even practical to include it in as a condition.
Well, in the water accounting system that in my tables and in the database that we're developing, the water actually does have an origin. And so this 125 acre feet is kind of marked as being no location for its use. Yes. And so if suddenly they're saying they're using this in a certain area, we will have it tagged and hopefully we'll be able to acknowledge that that this water is not earmarked to a certain location.
So give me a scenario that would happen. In other words, if Calandry Farms, LLC, let's say that they have 1,000 acre feet today and then we add 150. So you're saying if at the end of the year, the LLC submitted a report that they pumped 1,150, then that would raise the flag that the 150 were pumped without a specified location?
Yeah. In my tables, they all go back to where the original production right was, location, and then I start, and so Calandry Farms has water under a couple different things. They'll say, okay, they're going to use all their water here, they're going to use all their water here, and I'll say, oh wait, this water can't be used yet.
All right, as long as you're assuring us that's the case, then that's fine.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Director Ariki, because they have a duty to disclose where that extraction location is, and if they just add it on and start using it without notice to the Watermaster, they're in violation of the agreement.
Okay. And then Kate would know and she will bring it to the Watermaster's staff attention.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
questions on this transfer?
Yeah, Kate, can you just clarify, is Calgary Farms Inc. the one that's applying for this? Do they have any Exhibit 4 rights or permanent productive rights now?
Yes, they're an Exhibit 4 party.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to move on to the third and fourth transfers. And they start on page 165 of the packet. And Stephen and Richard Selleck would each like to do a one-time transfer of 6.665 acre-feet of carryover water to the 40th Street East Water Group. And that would be a total of 13.33 acre-feet. And the water would be used to fulfill 40th Street East Water Group's 2020 replacement water obligation of 13.33 acre-feet. And in July of 2020, the Selects transferred 20 acre-feet of carryover water to 40th Street previously to offset its 2019 replacement water obligation. So this kind of represents the second transfer a year later for the 40th Street East Water Group replacement water obligation.
And that's for 2020?
Correct. And both parties are in the central Annabelle sub-area, and there's a figure in the packet kind of showing the location on page 166. And the Selects are not pumping water, and the 40th Street East Water Group will be using this transfer for the 2020 replacement water obligation, and it does nothing. We find that the potential for material injury is defined in the judgment to be negligible, and we recommend approval of these two applications as well.
Mm-hmm. What does the 40th Street East Water Group uses the water for?
It's a mutual water company. And they changed their name. They used to be 40th Street Mutual Water Company, and their new name is 40th Street East Water Group.
I'm assuming that they were a party to the judgment and they have water rights, they just over pump.
I think that's a good question. I can't quite remember. I think that
They're a defaulted party.
yeah, and so I think they requested new production, and so they're a new production party. So they're granted new production, and they're using, instead of buying replacement water assessments, they're using transfers each year to fulfill their production.
I see.
And they need to do
the Watermaster Board would approve an application for them to pump?
Yes, they were approved new production.
They would approve a production.
Yeah, so they're
okay, that on the assumption that they would pay replacement water, right?
correct, or get a transfer every year.
Okay, and you don't have to recall what was the amount.
I don't recall, but I can look it up really quick.
That would be nice.
So they were on the May 2020 agenda for approval, and they're requesting a total of 37 acre-feet per year. That was the maximum. And they currently have 13 lots that are developed, and they have 11 additional lots. So that 37 is for full build-out.
I see. So they pumped more than 37 in 2019 and 2020?
No, they've never pumped 37. So 37 is if they do full build-out of all their lots. And I think their average has been around 21, and that was the 2016-2019 average of what they pumped per year.
Got it. Okay, and this question is a little more for Craig. Could a defaulted party can't really intervene? Is that a stupid question or a good question?
It's not stupid, but they are a party to the judgment. intervention is only for non-parties. So they are subject to the jurisdiction of the court, and there's no need for them to intervene.
Got it. So how do you define a defaulted party?
It's defined in the judgment. They're on a list in the judgment.
They chose purposely not to be part of the judgment.
Yes,
right?
yes. We're served with proper notice of the litigation and refused to, didn't participate. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, you're welcome. Are there any other questions on this application? So that's all I have for transfer, and the resolution for approval R-21-16 starts on page 133 of the packet.
Do I have a motion to approve?
And these are they're all in one resolution, the 2116.
Yes. Yes.
All right. I move that we approve resolution 21-16.
Okay, do I have a second? All right, with a motion and a second, do we have any public comment? Hearing no public comment, can we have
There is a board comment. I'm sorry, this is Derek. Just quickly back to Kate and staff, if you could just confirm, and it may be that I know there are Calandry entities that are part of the original Exhibit 4. I do not believe Calandry Farms Inc. is part of Exhibit 4 unless they were approved post the settlement. And it's a technicality, but I want to make sure that we have public records here that we're accurate on. I don't believe it makes a difference, but but I want to make sure we're accurate in the comments there. So could you clarify that they've been added post the judgment?
That's correct, Derek. This amendment, they got, I believe it's 1 acre foot of transfer from an Exhibit 4 party.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry.
That's correct.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions or public comment? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please? Director Chisholm?
Yes.
Director Ricci?
Yes.
Director Capello?
Yes.
Director Urosic?
Yes.
And Director McLaren? Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Now we will go to number 9, which is the administrator's report.
All right. Good morning. This is Matt. The only thing I have to report is that the variable administrative assessments, those parties that actually have variable assessments, the invoices for those will go out next week. As you know, our schedule for that is 1st of May, so we plan on Monday or Tuesday next week having those mailed out. So that's all I have to report unless there's any questions.
How are we doing with the collection of the assessment?
We're doing really good. I believe we reported that last month, and there's still approximately maybe 20,000, less than 20,000 of the 360,000 that has been invoiced, and that's for the fixed assessment. So we had very good collection rate on the fixed assessments, and as mentioned, the variable assessments will be going out next week, as well as any replacement water assessments for calendar year 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We will go to number 10, the Watermaster Engineer's report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Phyllis Stannon, and I have just 3 things to report on, but sometimes it might be nice, I think, to see a few illustrations, so I've got a few slides to do this. So on page 180 of your packet, you have copies of these tables. They are new production tables on the left and qualified small pumper tables on the right. These are the applications for these two categories that have been approved since we began the process. And so on the left, starting with new application, we have tables on the top that are by year, and the bottom table shows those applications approved by sub-area. What's shown there, of course, is the acre-foot per year of the new production approved. There's a little caveat, we've talked about this before, that there was one temporary new production approved of 215 acre-feet to Mr. Bannock, and so that has been corrected in the second column there, showing a total of about 371 acre-feet a year of new production approved to date. The qualified small pumpers tables are on the right, the top again by year and the bottom by sub-area. What's shown there are the acre-foot of year maximums of 3 acre-feet per year for each one of the small pumpers that have been qualified now, and that equates to 252 acre-feet a year divided by 3. That means we have approved 84 additional small pumpers to date. These are just the similar tables that you've seen in the past, and we'll just update these going forward. I know that people are concerned about how much new production is being approved in the valley, and so you'd like to perhaps keep up with it. So any questions on these tables?
So those 80 or so small pumpers that were added, those bring the totals to how many?
I don't know the exact total offhand. The judgment, I think, had a certain number, and then we actually, since that time, have seen that number is actually much larger, but it's several thousand small pumper members, and so this is 84 additional to those.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions associated with the table?
No.
Okay, great. So just moving on to the next slide. This is in our scope, and because we haven't said much about it, I wanted to just give you a brief update. So Todd Groundwater has kept databases of our monitoring of safe yield components in the past, but we did not have a comprehensive database together for the water accounting information. All of the transfers, all of this new production. Staff has done a great job in sort of keeping up with some of the details of all of this, but we wanted one comprehensive database to be able to hold everything and to be able to help us generate these annual reports. And so I just wanted to provide a brief update. We've done this in Access format because it's such a flexible and useful tool with respect to keeping all of the details and the numbers and the quantities that we need. Right now, the current database contains about 18 data tables and then various lookup tables. The lookup tables allow for there to be formulas and programming within the database such that we can get to certain details from time to time. For example, if we have an XY of a well, we might want to know what parcel it's in. And so these lookup tables allow for some of that to be done automatically. The one thing that I know people have been frustrated with Access databases is that they're incredibly functional and very useful, but they don't particularly look great. They are capable of generating reports. Sometimes those reports are, in strange formats and older fonts, and they have to be sort of manipulated in order to be a little bit more user-friendly when people look at them. And so what we've done is incorporate Microsoft's Model Builder into this. Our data analyst has incorporated that into the Access database and into the reporting. So what we have done is generate detailed formatting for each one of those tables such that they match the formatting that everyone is used to seeing in your 6 annual reports to date. And so, there are a lot of different ways to format tables, but I think that the best format is the one you're used to looking at, and you know where to look for certain things. We've tried very hard to keep the appendices for the water accounting information in the annual report similar from year to year, so that people are used to knowing what table they're on and knowing where in the appendix they can go to get their information. So I've just shown a little inset there to demonstrate that even though the database itself is full of information and data and production IDs, etc., that we do have the ability to generate out of this database sort of consistently formatted tables that we'll be putting into the annual report. This keeps us from keeping disparate Excel files from year to year to year, which really is less efficient and doesn't give us the opportunity to date stamp carryover water, for example, or trace transfers back to the original party that was in the judgment, for example. So those are the kinds of things that we want to be able to be sure that we keep details of all of that in one comprehensive place. So we're in good shape. We have most of the historical data already in the database, and for this annual report that we're producing now, we're testing the automated reporting right out of that database to make sure that our numbers are consistent with what has been kept up with separately by Kate in a myriad of Excel spreadsheets. So the one thing that we are still putting in are the meter IDs and the information associated with meter documentation. So everything is looking good. Everything is on budget. And I just wanted to give everyone an update that this is happening and that it's going to be available for all of us to use going forward. Are there any questions on this?
Right. When is the draft annual report will be available? Just in May sometime?
Well, we're working on it now. We usually post the first draft in early June and get comments from that, and then post a revised draft in July, and then, of course, the July board meeting will be the public hearing and the approval of the revised draft. It's due to the court August 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the last few slides that I have are presenting some information that was requested by the board last month, and also staff has been working with us and asked us to put together some information to bring forth just to begin the discussion again. I know we've talked about this in the past, and I want to just quickly update us on where we are in our thought process. So with respect to a groundwater model, we've talked a bit in the past about development of a modeling, a groundwater model or some sort of tools or options to improve the Watermaster engineer's ability to comply with, I think there are several uses of it, of course, but I think there's really two primary responsibilities in the judgment that we have that I think that these modeling tools would be most helpful with. And one is the monitoring of safe yield components, and the second is the material injury analyses. Most of our material injury analyses have been singular applications, as you know, and we've gotten some comments from the advisory committee that we really need the ability to look at some of this on a cumulative basis. I think so far the numbers have been relatively small, but there's been concern that they're growing and that the applications that are coming in now are asking for more and more water. So I want the ability to be able to demonstrate the understanding of not only each singular application, but perhaps on a cumulative basis. So I just have a few slides about each one of these responsibilities. And so dealing first with just an overall slide here about some of the options that we have. So I have here the USGS 2014 model documentation report shown on this slide. And this really is making best use of the existing tools and models that are in the basin now. And there are kind of two components to this. The first is that USGS has what's called a Basin Characterization model. This is not a groundwater flow model. This is rather a model that they have developed that is a bit of a stream flow runoff and soil moisture balance to compute recharge. And we see this as a potential tool to compute recharge on an annual basis and report that in our annual report. This would give us a better opportunity for that safe yield component. And then in addition to that sort of spreadsheet basin characterization type model, which is really sort of a module that goes with the larger flow model, we do have the 2014 mod flow model. That would be, I think, incredibly helpful with the additional safe yield components monitoring and analysis, and in particular water budgets going forward on an annual basis. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. And then also, we have looked under the hood a bit of that 2014 model and reminded ourselves that USGS built a future model scenario. And I think this would be most helpful for a material injury analysis. This future model scenario allows you to use the flow model in a what-if mode. What if there's more pumping here? What if, I'm sorry, could we just go back one more? I just have one more little comment there. How best to use that? And as staff is seeing, I do have a whole slide based on that future scenario. We're going to talk about that in just 1 second. So the proposals that we have put forth in front of the board are the more typical hydrogeological proposals to take the model, incorporate all of the improvements that have been made to it in the certain banking areas, to modify the model with those improvements, to evaluate how the model fits the conceptual model of the hydrogeology of the subbasin, to update it, and then to recalibrate. So that would provide a very comprehensive and technically robust tool to use going forward. But it's incredibly expensive. $200,000 to $300,000. It's an existing model, so it's not as much as building a model from the very start, but it's a big lift. And we recognize when we first proposed this, we were hoping there might be some grant funding. We didn't quite see anything materialize. And we're trying now to see, aren't there some more cost-effective options that we could just do in a more straightforward manner? I think we have more experience now. Groundwater sees what the basin actually needs, and perhaps we can streamline some of these options. And so, speaking first to that future scenario, we can go to that next slide now. Thanks so much. We can, again, pull this in from the model. Sometimes it's difficult to set a flow model up in a what-if type analysis. And USGS has already done this for us. And so really we could pull this in for adaptation for the material injury, set up conditions in accordance to the judgment, which would really just be putting in the adjudicated pumping. We've got production totals, as you know, by well throughout the sub-basin for the years that we've been putting all of that in place. And then run cumulative analysis for the applications. We could do this on the annual report, or if there's a large and perhaps a more complex project, we could run it for that as needed. So this is a lot cheaper than the $200,000 analysis that would structurally modify and recalibrate the model. This is just pulling in the future scenario. We think we could set this up for somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000. I have our modeler looking at this now, and we're going to get some more detailed cost estimates for that. And then on an annual basis, the updates for this would be, somewhere in the thousands of dollar range, which could fit nicely into the budgets for the annual reports. So I propose this as one cost-effective measure for possible going forward here. Does anybody have any questions on just the future scenario before I talk a little bit more about the USGS model?
No, this is all good news.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's go to the next slide then and look at this basin characterization tool. So again, it's a USGS tool that they've used with the 2014 model to estimate annual recharge volume. Again, this is a little bit of a different animal. It's not quite as functional right off the shelf as the 2014 model. So we're kind of diving into the hood a bit for this one. And I don't have detailed costs on what it might take. But the idea here is that we would update the BCM to the current period and then recalculate that annually. I mean, this feels, the natural recharge coming into the basin is most of what was used to determine the native state yield in the first place. So even though we have a nice database of the stream flow information and precipitation, et cetera, we've not done that analysis for what is the actual natural recharge coming in over time. So I think we would need to calibrate this to the historical recharge. We would want to make sure that the estimates are reasonable with respect to the estimates that were used for the native state yield, or if they're not, to bring that back to the board for discussion. Update it to the current period and then use it annually. So that is the way to use a tool for monitoring the state yield components. And then this very last slide that I have, this is a continuation of that concept, and that is just looking at the other safe yield components all being put together in a water budget. So I continue to think that the 2014 ModFlow model is an excellent tool for a water budget analysis. It doesn't quite, match all of the hydrogeologic conceptualization that was done for the period, and I don't think it has to with respect to what we really need it for. I think we can get change in groundwater and storage on a more precise basis than we can from our water level analysis, but married together, I think that's a really wonderful opportunity to make sure that the water levels are telling us what the change in storage is telling us from the model, and it gives us a way to sort of validate the model for the future. We would reestablish the historical 2014 USGS model and update it, but only with the major water budget components, just to keep the cost down. We would put in pumping and banking data in particular. There would be no recalibration, no structural modifications, no ability to comprehensively use this model, in a more sort of typical way, but it would serve as a water budget tool, and I think it would be a very good one. Purpose of water budget analysis. So those are our ideas of trying to make these tools cost effective, but give us a little bit more than just the one little equation that we've been using for all of our material injury analyses, and given us the opportunity to do a little bit more detail. 17 years you're going to be reevaluating your native state yield. 17 years is a long time, but it will come quicker than you think. And the other thing is that if you keep up with your water budget details as you go, it will be a much less of a heavy lift at that time, and we might even be able to really know some of the details of what's happening in the basin prior to that time. So that's it for me. I just wanted to bring some of these ideas forward. I'm happy to answer any questions. You'll be hearing more from us as we begin to sort of put a more detailed proposal together. Always interested in board feedback or anybody else's feedback. So now would be a good time to answer questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is Adam. I really like your presentation, Thomas, and thank you for taking the time to put this together. It's very thoughtful, and I'm glad you're using the tools that we have already. And frankly, the Valley paid for the USGS work. We've been working with the USGS for a very, very, very long time on this model. I like what you presented. I think you would help you and the board and the staff to have a much clearer picture of what's going on in the groundwater basin. And I think it's a great idea, and going forward, hopefully we'll see more granular data from you and proposals, and hopefully the board will see it for what it is and approve it.
Great, thank you for that, Adam. Any other questions?
This is Dwayne. I just had one question for you, Philip. So, in regards to the data, most of my experience has been is that models are as good as the data that's coming into the model to get the desired outcome and make sure that it's accurate when it's needed. Do you have, given the information that you've been receiving over the last several years, sufficient data points and others to be able to accomplish that and make that a reliable something we likely work on or you need additional years? What's your thoughts with regards to that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. That's actually been a little bit of why I think we are now sort of proposing some of these cost-saving modeling measures because we do have good data. I think, working with the staff has been a real pleasure. They have tabulated quite a bit of information for us. We have tried every single year in our annual report to provide a little bit more detailed information than the last year's. We now, have good information on wells and production. And with extraction being the largest outflow of the water budget for this basin, and with natural recharge being the largest inflow for this subbasin, that gets us a long way toward, real accurate water budgets. And, now that we have a lot of additional banking in this subbasin and in various sub-areas, we're getting a lot of details from that as well. Some of the storage agreement details are coming out. We've got a lot of information now from Armagosa Creek, for example. So the answer, Dwayne, is that it's not a perfect data set. I wish every single producer in the valley would report every single thing. Having said that, I think the data sets are good, and when we put the database together, we began to feel very comfortable with respect to sort of seeing a little bit of a trend now. We've got ramp down underway. One more year of ramp down is coming up, and I think that the numbers are coming together pretty well for that. I think there's still the small pumpers. There's still a bit of an unknown that we're going to need to hone in on perhaps in the future. But for most of what I think is going to affect the water budgets, I feel very confident that the data are good. So that's really why I was able to kind of come up with what wasn't, I didn't want to pretend it was just me. I mean, we have excellent modelers and staff that have been thinking about this and looking at it. But this is why we were able, I think, to come up with what I believe to be more realistic management tool ideas rather than, just this comprehensive, historically accurate, hydrogeological tool. I think that we're really honing in on data and management.
Mm-hmm. One thing, fellows, and maybe the answer is no and not sure right now. You know how the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, Groundwater Sustainability Plan, that there was some funding from the state for those. Do you think, even though I know Groundwater Sustainability Act doesn't apply here, do you think that there is an opportunity for the Watermaster Board to apply for some of this grant funding, even if it's partial funding, to update the model?
I was really hoping that would be the case. The Prop 68 Round 3 grants that came out were a possibility, except for the wording was very much limited to the GSA, the Groundwater Sustainability Agencies. And these implementation grants that are now coming out are, again, they're not only limited to the GSAs, but they're limited to the projects that are listed in the GSPs. So there isn't anything yet with respect to that. but I do think that, this adjudication is, has requirements under SGMA. SGMA requires that adjudication reporting be accomplished, and we every year go onto the website and upload our annual report. So my hope is that there will be some additional funding freeing up from the SGMA programs in the future. But to date, it has been limited to the GSO.
Yeah, and effectively it is a groundwater management tool anyway, similar to what SGMA does.
Exactly. I mean, I can tell you that so many of our groundwater sustainability plans incorporate or consider things that you have in your judgment. Groundwater basins are looking to be better managed and maximize the opportunity to have extraction. And so, the possibility of transfers, for example, is being incorporated in some of the GSTs. The concept of carryover, of allocations. So yeah, I agree with you. I think there's nothing that's more rigorous in management than an adjudication. We can all have our ideas about how that should work. But nonetheless, I agree with you. It's a groundwater management tool, and it's a groundwater management problem, and therefore I think it does apply under SGMA. So we will see. To date, it's been a little disappointing so far, but perhaps in the future there will be an opportunity.
I hope so. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, let's just echo some of Adam's points. I think this is, I know from the landowner's side, appreciate the creativity and cost savings that you and your staff have looked into being, the economic impact that these do bring upon the assessments and our limitations to finances. So I thank you for that. And I'd encourage you, to bring up to the board as well as to the public of, where you're needing information. You have wells, you know where they are. I encourage, every landowner and every pumper to provide that information if they can keep our cost reduction down and limit the need to, do a major model, that way. So let us help you too.
That would be so great. Thank you so much. That's fabulous. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other comments from anyone about modeling? Can't believe everybody doesn't want to talk more about modeling. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all very much. That's it for me.
Thank you, Phyllis. That was a wonderful, informative report. Now we will go to 11, the General Counsel's report.
Yes, that can be relatively brief. A couple of things have occurred in the Court of Appeals with respect to Watermaster-related matters. We discussed last month the appellate court's decision on the Willis class, and as the minutes reflect, the consensus of the board was to request that opinion be published and circulated as a published opinion. You recall the Court of Appeal did not certify it for publication. And we did submit a letter on behalf of the Watermaster. I'll make sure it's in the board agenda packet just for informational purposes next month. And there were others that submitted the same request, that in light of the importance of the decision and the issues at hand, that the court consider releasing it for publication. And the Court of Appeal agreed and did that. And so it can be cited as full authority in matters that it relates to. So that was good news. The second matter relates to the appeal involving Phelan. Just so that to remind you, there was an order of Judge Comar in our case in 2018 denying Phelan's request to be exempt from paying RWAs for its water production in 2016 and 2017. Judge Comar denied that request to Phelan. Phelan took that up on appeal, and we got notice from the Court of Appeal that briefing is due. Phelan's opening appellate brief was due back in April, and they did not submit any opening brief, and the Court of Appeal has sent effectively a notice of default to Phelan, telling them that if they don't file in 15 days, the appeal may be dismissed. So I expect to see an opening brief in that time or request for an extension, but we shall see. They have to May 6th to file an opening brief. So that's the Court of Appeal update, but I wanted also to let you know last month we had a closed session to discuss 3 parties in particular, and all I can say now is that we will have a closed session next month to go over those 3 parties, and that consistent with your direction, proposals were made to 2 of them, and in one of them we're preparing court documents. There'll be much more to describe and explain and discuss in terms of feedback that I've gotten so far at the May meeting, where we will have closed session. So that's my report.
Well, thank you. And we will go to number 12, and that would be board members' requests for future agenda items.
I want to, given the drought that we're in, I want to add to the staff report a brief update with the water supply picture. We're talking about, replacement water and things like that. I think it's, even if it takes 2 or 3 minutes for that, just to let us know what's going on, that would be awesome.
Okay, we can do that.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other future agenda items? Okay, hearing no more, we will adjourn this meeting to our next meeting, Wednesday, May 26, 2021. Thank you, everyone, and have a very nice day.
Thank you. Great job. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.